What's up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you are watching on our fast-growing YouTube channel, that is Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THF staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones, and AJ here for another episode, the D'Marco Dunn edition of our UNC Basketball Lookahead podcast series. Again, guys, if you haven't seen the ones we've done so far, head on over to our YouTube channel after this one, click the playlist tab, and click on Look Ahead Series. Tune into all the other episodes we've done so far, as we've definitely done quite a few. But like I said, focusing on D'Marco Dunn on this one, I'm going to run through some stats real quick. Then I'm going to kick it to AJ to dive in to D'Marco. Played 23 games last year as a true freshman, averaged 4.1 minutes per 1 point, 0.3 rebounds and assists, and shot 29% from the floor. I know it's a small sample size, AJ. I know D'Marco as a freshman wasn't a guy who got to play a ton and we got to really see a lot of, but looking back at his freshman campaign and some of the glimpses that we got to see him play in games, what are just your overall thoughts on the freshman year that the D'Marco Dunn had for the Tar Heels?
I would like to have seen more of him just so we'd have more intel. Not that the team needed him to play more or anything like that. I like intel. I like to know more about guys, but 94 minutes, not a lot of playing time. There were a couple of games we got to see him play in the first half. He played in the first half of 5 games last year. And I think the one that maybe as I really try to, squeeze whatever intel we can get out of D'Marco's freshman year, the game that stands out to me more and more is the Notre Dame game on the road, because Anthony Harris was out with COVID. I believe it was COVID at the time. They had a few guys out with COVID, but Anthony was not playing. That was that period also where we were starting to wonder what's up with Anthony. Why isn't he there? Why isn't he playing? Ultimately, he was deemed, quote unquote, unavailable for the rest of the season by UNC and later transferred. But D'Marco played 8 minutes in the game at Notre Dame. It was a competitive game. A lot of the other ones he got minutes in were lopsided games, either in Carolina's favor or otherwise. He played in the first half at Wake Forest. That was an ugly game. He got minutes at Miami. He got minutes against Kentucky and Las Vegas. But the Notre Dame game, he was put out there. And that was January 5th, I believe, January 4th, January 5th. So it was still kind of early. If you remember when we did our Dontrez Styles video, our podcast, we discussed the fact that he only played 22 minutes up to New Year's. He didn't get on the court other than some mop-up stuff. So D'Marco was in the same process, probably having played a little bit less up to that point. So he gets 5 minutes in the first half at Notre Dame, gets 3 in the second half. It's a competitive game. He's on the floor, and he didn't look comfortable. But the beautiful thing about that is all athletes, every athlete on the face of the planet, be it Babe Ruth when he first picked up a bat, be it Michael Jordan when he's in shorts and a tank top at some point in his life, all athletes go through uncomfortable stretches, periods in which they must adapt. They have deer in the headlight moments. And I'm not saying that's what D'Marco was that night, deer in the headlights, but my point, I think, stands. So he had to get on the court at some point and have that holy crap moment and just figure out a way to get to the end of his period on the floor, if you know what I mean. Guys go through that. And D'Marco clearly was very much in the developmental process last year. So he had that. But the beautiful thing about that experience, Jacob, is in the summertime, there's no stress over that now. Okay, I had it. I experienced it. I was in a situation where against a team that's very tough to guard. Notre Dame's really hard to guard. You got to spread it out. You got to be ready for guys who can drive from anywhere, pop from anywhere. So I do think it stresses young perimeter defenders especially. And it challenges your communication in your half-court defense as well. So he had that little bit of experience. But he also had some games where he played pretty well. The Boston College game, which is actually a few days before that, he checked in with 10:53 left and stayed in the game, finished it out, got credit for 11 minutes. So he had a period there where he got to sweat a lot. I think it was December 18th, which was Kentucky, up to about January 18th, 20th, in that range. He played the bulk of his minutes. So he got on the floor, he got to sweat, he got a chance to learn, and then it was time for the team to put everything into auto drive after Garcia left. And when they announced that Anthony Harris wasn't going to be able to play, and basically they went to the Iron Five, so he had a chance to observe the rest of the way. But that stretch of games, and that one in particular at Notre Dame, that's where his value comes from. And what did he learn from that? That's what he's been applying ever since.
Yeah, no, and I remember seeing him. I'm going way back here. I remember seeing him in Myrtle Beach at a basketball tournament I was covering I believe it was about a year or so
It was
before he got
it was
to
during
Carolina.
COVID.
Yeah,
It was one of the
it,
few events during COVID. They were having stuff in Myrtle Beach.
yeah,
And you went down there to cover him with Garner Road, right?
Yep. Went down there and watched him play. A couple other guys that Carolina was kind of looking at, but he really, he genuinely impressed me that week. I really just like what I saw from him, and I remember talking to you about it and being like, and this is a different comparison, but I remember kind of telling you like slightly smaller, better shooting version of Theo Pinson, what he reminded me of. And the reason I said that is because when I watched him in 3 or 4 of these games, he did a little bit of everything. He's a guy that would take the ball down court, could really find the teammates very well. He got steals and made plays on the defensive side of the ball, but he also made shots, and he made tough shots. And that's where kind of the comparison did, because I saw so many different things out of him that kind of reminded me of Theo, kind of a jack of all trades guy, can do a little bit of everything. But I thought Dunn just had a little bit better of a jump shot than I ever saw from Theo Pinson, probably a little bit less athletic overall than Theo Pinson was, because he can obviously a guy that could jump out the gym. But that was kind of my comparison when I saw him in high school. And I think we all knew minutes were going to be limited last year, and not only as him coming in as a true freshman, Hubert Davis's first year, but when you look at the guys that were in front of him, AJ, I mean, where was he going to play? You got Caleb Love, RJ Davis, even other guards that Carolina, Anthony Harris earlier on in the year. You had Kerwin Walton, who I know didn't play a ton, but a guy that had a really nice freshman season under Roy Williams in his freshman year. So you just had a lot of guys in front of him. And when Hubert kind of stuck to that smaller rotation, it was always going to be tough for D'Marco to find minutes and find opportunities to get out there.
Yeah, and the thing about when you saw him at Gardner Road, remember he told you, if I remember correctly, that one of his emphasis that summer was to play the point.
Yeah,
because he had been a straight up shooting guard when he was in Arizona, and then when he moved to Fayetteville and was at Westover. In fact, he average like 30 points a game or something on the state title team. Yeah, and then that was his junior year. So he was a scorer, known as a scorer, but he knew he had to get more into his game. So he played point for Garner Road, and then he did a lot of that in training at Carolina last year. Did a lot of that combo stuff. Hubert loves combo guards. A lot of coaches do. Roy went in the direction of, look, you got to get multiple guys that can run, especially with the shot clock. And the shot clock may get shorter in college basketball again. So you have to have dudes that could get on the point and could run a set, could create something from the top. So you need combo guards all over the place now. The game is spread out. You're going to be a more respected three-point shooter if guys have to lay off you a little bit. Or it's going to be easier for you to be an open three-point shooter if your drive has to be respected. Mm-hmm. So you just can't be a catch and shoot guy. That was one of Kerwin's problems. He wasn't much of a driver. He was a catch and shoot guy. D'Marco has other elements to his game. So he spent last year working on that as well. We didn't really see a lot of it when we saw him play, especially in mop-up duty. Mop-up duty is organized as coaches try to make it, tends to be a little bit sloppy. That's why I've said for years, I think that mop-up snaps in football are more valuable than mop-up minutes in basketball, because it's more like what it's going to be like when they get into a regular part of a game. So we didn't get to see a whole lot of that, but I know it was going on. And the other thing, too, that really impressed me about D'Marco, and the last 2 years with COVID in the media, the press room has been closed. So we have to do all of our work at our media seats, whether it's upstairs where most of the media sits, or the concourse level where I've been able to sit sometimes, some others sit sometimes. And the players will come out and shoot around. We get to see it. And almost every time last year, D'Marco came out and was working on his game. He was working a lot on shooting off the dribble, the left, the right, and from various spots. A lot of it was mid-range. And that kind of tells me, there's a little RJ Davis thing there. RJ's got a little bit of a mid-range game that grew and grew last season. I think D'Marco has the potential to have a really nice mid-range game, especially if he can utilize that dribble to get that. Because you're only going to run so many curls. You can only have so many Drew Nicholases or Juan Dixons at Maryland catching off the curl and scoring. That stuff just doesn't. You don't see as much of that anymore. You got to be able to shoot off the dribble, pull up and hit that mid-range stuff. We saw him working a lot on that.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah, I completely agree with that. It definitely wasn't from a lack of effort last year out of him. Like I said, he was almost every home game he was out there. There was other guys out there too, but it just seemed like after any game he was out there for a while, not just for 5
for a while, yeah, for like an hour, yeah.
Yeah. getting reps in.
And he and Dontrez a couple of times went through full on drill, like
practices, basically.
Almost made it like a practice. Yeah. They would have student managers out there feeding them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a full one time. D'Marco did his in full uniform, which was pretty cool.
Oh, no. Yeah. And like I said, I think that's a testament to the type of kid he is and the type of a kid that Dontrez Styles is. If you keep working like that, you're going to get an opportunity at some point. AJ, for the ad read, I'm going to add this too. 41-3 record in his 2 seasons at Westover and Fayetteville. So you're talking about a guy that was just a serial winner there, averaged, 22 points and 8 rebounds basically in his career there. And during his senior year, had an even bigger year, averaging more than that. So a guy that really tore it up at Westover in his 2 years. You can see that the talent's definitely there. And trust me, I saw him in person. He's a really talented kid. There's a reason he was recruited so heavily by North Carolina. AJ, I want to go ahead and read our ad read in this one. One of our favorite sponsors in here, myperfectfranchise.net, Andy Ludicky. Absolutely love him. And guys, prices are going crazy. Inflation's going up, just tough times financially. Who knows what the job market's going to look like? My Perfect Franchise, you can take control of your own career path. Andy Ludicky's a longtime Rivals member, diehard college football fan. If you guys have been listening, huge Mac Brown fan, and most importantly, a franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchise and businesses throughout his career. Using his expertise, he helps others find their American dream through a very thorough and free, keyword free consultation process. So guys, call Andy, put your life and career in your own hands. If you've thought about starting your own franchise, wanted to take control of your own career path, be your own boss, you can talk to Andy 100% free, see if it's right for you, see if it's something you really want to follow through, and he'll help you along the way. It's 100% free, guys. So what do you really have to lose? Find your perfect franchise at myperfectfranchise.net. Click the link below to head on over there. And if you do talk to Andy, which I 100% recommend, don't think about it, just do it. Make sure you tell him that Tar Heel Illustrated sent you. Again, guys, myperfectfranchise.net. Shout out to Andy. And really, if you guys are looking to do that, I think that's something you should hop on right now. And I think it's a great opportunity, and Andy will be there every step of the way with you. AJ, we'll wrap this one up by obviously the main point of this podcast. If you guys have read the title, looking ahead a little bit. So looking ahead to next year with the team that Carolina is expected to have, with the expectations, a lot of guys returning, you've got just a really, really experienced, guard, just guards out of Carolina. You got a really experienced forward line as well, with some of the additions of Pete Nance and obviously Armando Bacot coming back, and some of the younger guys too. So when you look at D'Marco Dunn's, what you saw last year, you kind of put that all into context. I know it's not a lot, and you look ahead to next year with what the team is looking like. I mean, I think we've talked about this in kind of Styles podcast, and he got more opportunities than Dunn did. It's kind of too early to tell what D'Marco Dunn's role may be on next year's team, if anything, because like I said, it's just almost the same team that Carolina had last year. So I think it depends on the improvements that Dunn can make. What can he do in practice when he's given the opportunity? And what can he do in games, smaller minutes early in the season next year? Can he take advantage of those opportunities to prove to Hubert Davis that he can go out there and be a positive contributor to this team? So what are your thoughts on maybe the role that D'Marco Dunn could have for North Carolina next season?
Well, I think the first mission is just to keep getting better, because if the opportunities are not plentiful this year, they will be the year after. Mm-hmm. So one of the messages that Hubert has cultivated, and I think he's going to use to his advantage, is patience and work on your craft, be a part of the team, do what's asked, and your opportunities are going to come. I think that's what a lot of people were surprised D'Marco didn't leave. Look, North Carolina's a good place to be in the NIL world, even if you're not a starter, even if you're not a regular in a rotation. I think those kids have learned that, and goodness knows if they have the kind of season this year that everybody anticipates, they make the kind of run everybody anticipates, these kids, everybody in the roster, the walk-ons, everybody, they're going to realize, wow, this is a pretty good place to be. So if you're going to have to grow your game, there's no better place to do it when you've got a bunch of studs around you who are older. You're banging with every day in practice. Number two, you're doing it at a place that has a culture like Carolina's has, where I don't want to over glorify the culture, but it's a really good place to be. Yeah. If your intent is to get better and be in a winning situation. And number three, you're going to make some cash. And I'll throw number four in there. It's a cool place to go to school when you're a basketball player.
Yeah.
So There's a lot. You could go somewhere and play 25 minutes a game, but it's not a great place to go. You're not going to make any NIL cash. When you finish, you're not going to have the contacts that you will if you're part of the North Carolina family for your full career. So there are a lot of factors that play here, other than just being a guy that maybe doesn't get on the court very much as a sophomore, and then he's only got 2 years left. What does he do? Well, I think the message there is just keep working on your game. You're gonna be in some games where you're asked to help because of whatever the circumstances are, and there's an opportunity. Just because Seth Trimble is so highly touted, and we are hearing really positive things about him, that doesn't mean that he's always going to be available. That doesn't mean that D'Marco doesn't improve to a point where he leaps him and he's in the rotation. It doesn't mean that, you never know, RJ could get hurt, Caleb could get hurt. He needs to be ready to play. He needs to be ready to help the team. He's going to have some opportunities to do that, and he needs to practice well. Hubert is very old school, and he is a staunch believer in if you practice well, you'll play. If you don't practice well, you're not going to play. And I like that because a lot of coaches play kids out of fear of losing them. Hubert's not worried about that. And I think part of that is because of the culture that he's cultivating in that program where everybody knows where they stand. There's no misinformation in the discussion. So D'Marco knows exactly where he stands as a player, where he stands with respect to opportunities on this year's team, and moving forward. Because if this club wins it and a bunch of guys leave, suddenly next year, D'Marco's a third-year guy who's been around the program for 2 years, really knows Hubert very well, has continued to develop his game, and opportunity could be there his last 2 years. It's kind of like it was in the 80s, like it was in the early 90s when Hubert was coming along. So he's living proof of what he wants, of the patience he wants kids to have. And I think that's what he wants from D'Marco. How much can he help this year's team? I think he can help, but we've got to see how much he's improved. I haven't seen him enough in a Carolina uniform or gotten enough reports away from Carolina basketball when they're doing their summer stuff to have a good handle on what he's going to be. I think, to me, when we get to see the team here in a month or so from now and see him a few times before the season starts, I'm going to be really, really interested to see just if he looks different, if he carries himself differently. Those would all be really, really good signs of him in the midst of his process and heading in the right direction, which I anticipate is the case.
Wouldn't be a THI podcast if we didn't drop the P word on here, AJ. I mean, it's just a fact. The process had to happen. And I think D'Marco Dunn is in the middle of that process right now. I think he's a perfect guy to kind of use that word on. He's going to continue to develop. Again, he is an extremely talented kid, I think. And I think he's a guy that at some point in his Carolina career is going to be a big contributor and is going to be relied upon for UNC. So next year,
he's trusting the process.
Yeah,
he's trusting the process. Yep. Hubert I've said this 1,000 times before. Everyone's got their own process. A process to me for an athlete or in anything. Me in my career here, I came in through the side door. I had to pay my dues. It was a process. I had to write for some crap. It was a process. It was what it was. In what you're doing, people listening, and whatever it is that they've endeavored to do, whether it was vocationally or not, or otherwise, everyone has a process. A process is like a DNA. D'Marco has that process as well, and he is in regular communication with Hubert, and the whole process is being monitored. And part of understanding the process is not worrying about things that are outside of the projected process. Yeah. And that's important, because if you can get to that point, then you're not the guy who's going to jump to 3 schools. These dudes who jump to 3 schools don't have a process. They don't understand they don't appreciate or respect the process. What we've seen so far from Dontrez and D'Marco as examples is that they fully understand the process and they respect the process.
100%, AJ. And I think that's a great place to wrap this one up, the D'Marco Dunn edition of our UNC Basketball Lookahead Series podcast. Again, guys, if you want to see the other episodes we're doing, just go to our YouTube channel, hit that playlist tab, and you'll see a playlist where you can find every single one of these episodes. And make sure you head on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Again, I've reminded you guys many times, if you have followed this series, AJ puts out an article on a specific player, D'Marco Dunn, this week on Monday, and then does one on Wednesday, which I believe is 5 best games. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
The 5 best games from last year and what they mean.
Yep. So it's a great series. I've really enjoyed kind of even for me, going back and kind of recapping and reading some of AJ's thoughts and best games. You're like, man, I forgot about that game. I forgot when he came in there and did that. So it's a great little series to follow. And again, you can click the link in the description below and head on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com to see those 2 articles as well. I want to give myperfectfranchise.net one more shout out. Shout out Andy Ludicky, guys. Again, head on over myperfectfranchise.net. Links in the description below. Put your career in your own hands. Take charge of your own career path. Start your own perfect franchise. And again, 100% free consultation process through Andy. So what do you really have to lose? Just make sure you tell him the TarHeelIllustrated.com sent you. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones for another episode of our UNC Basketball Lookahead Series. We appreciate you tuning in. Let's do this. If you're excited about D'Marco Dunn's potential and excited to see what he may be able to do this year, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up below. Like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well, so you know every single time we upload. And guys, we are uploading a ton, especially this time of year with football season starting here very, very shortly. Appreciate you watching as always, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.